this entry in the vlog, I will be going over some tips for getting started on our first writing project, and in particular, process assignment number 1, which is due on Monday, May 20th. Let me first start off by saying that everyone did a really great job posting their initial discussion posts for week 1 discussion number 1. Little bit of introductions, some good thoughts and discussion of what academic writing is and how we viewed it in the past. Continue those discussions over the course of the week, but I thought I would kind of get this video up before discussion post number 2 is due, in order to help you think about what this project is and how to approach brainstorming possible topics, as that is part of that discussion prompt, that second discussion prompt for the week as well. So writing project number 1 is primarily a task in a certain type of reading, a certain type of thinking, and a certain type of analysis to help us enter into larger conversations. So your task will be to identify a single story narrative or a set of assumptions or conventional wisdom about a topic of your choosing. Then you'll locate at least one text, or maybe several, that you think reflects that set of assumptions or that narrative in some way, whether it be kind of arguing for that way of thinking, or maybe simply assuming it to be true, arguing something else based on those assumptions. You will then look for trouble, and I'm borrowing this phrase from Catherine Savini's piece that we'll read in week 2. You'll examine those sources and their issues, their underlying assumptions, their complexities, and the effects of that single story. Your goal will not necessarily be to overturn that narrative, at least in this moment, okay? It may not even be a narrative that's completely untrue. So what I want us to think about with this video is what kinds of topics might work for this, and also then allow you to brainstorm some possible ones in the second discussion prompt for week 1. So some keys to this writing project. Again, to locate one or several articles that in some way reflects your chosen single story about the topic. That can be, and I think it often likely will be, from popular sources such as newspapers, magazines, other websites online, so not necessarily peer-reviewed scholarly articles, but rather popular sources in which these narratives tend to persist. We will then use Savini's methods of noticing and articulating a problem in its details to analyze those texts and extrapolate the larger issues and concerns that analysis brings about. And again, in the Savini piece in week 2, we'll look at how you can juxtapose two texts to identify tensions, to think about your own experiences and how they contrast with what's being described or discussed in that article, and other methods for this method of looking for trouble that we'll develop in week 2. You'll kind of work to identify those areas of tension, those underlying beliefs or assumptions or other issues that surface when you analyze their ideas or arguments. And again, the goal of this writing project will not be to prove an argument or support a thesis at this moment. Rather, it's going to lay the foundation for the work that you'll do with the subject later in the course. A phrase I like to use is that in this piece, you'll kind of wallow in complexity. You'll look at the complexities of the issue, of the subject, of the topic, the beliefs surrounding it, the narrative surrounding it, and really just kind of pull out those complexities and notice things when you read carefully and read in a certain way in the articles that surround that topic. So some tips on choosing a topic to discuss in the process assignment. Again, you can use the discussion prompt for this week, the second discussion prompt for week 1, just to really kind of throw some ideas at the wall, see what sticks, see what others think of those possible topic ideas. But I think you can consider things that you've already noticed, maybe in other classes or internships or work that you've done in the past. You can delve into your own academic interests, whether you be interested in politics and political science, or international studies, or art or music, or whatever it might be, or even personal hobbies and interests you have. I think I mentioned somewhere that I would actually probably write about popular narratives about the female characters in Game of Thrones right now, because I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, and I think there's really interesting conversations going on surrounding them, but definitely there is a shared story evolving around that. Not that I necessarily even disagree with. And again, that single story does not necessarily have to be completely untrue or even mostly untrue. It's a single story simply because it is incomplete. It is one way of viewing it, and you're going to identify what issues kind of abound around it, given those kind of maybe incomplete aspects or elements. Some examples of just past topics that students have done with this assignment in the past. And we'll actually get to read an essay based on this first one, Columbia's Single Story as Co-Columbia, as the student put it, with its kind of history with the drug trade. Narrative surrounding the position of the First Lady of the United States. Female characters in horror cinema, i.e. the final girl trope. Retributive justice, affirmative action, and the narratives that surround those issues. The narrative of Monsanto as a quote-unquote evil corporation. The narratives around performance-enhancing drugs in modern sports. The usefulness of negative attack ads, the assumption that, well, you have to go negative to win political elections, and the narrative surrounding what I understood as state-run kind of football clubs like PSG or Manchester City, these clubs that are owned by organizations that are kind of funded by governments, right? So these were all topics that students in some way kind of investigated with this writing project, and it led to different kinds of research projects on down the line. So again, in the process assignment, in process assignment number 1, and you'll see I've just put part of that prompt up here, you're going to select 2 possible topics, maybe based out of your brainstorming from the discussion prompt for this week, and select 2 of them, and then kind of develop them a bit further beyond what you have to do in the discussion prompt. So here you'll really describe the subject in some detail, share the narrative or conventional wisdom or common beliefs about it that you think are out there, and then identify the sources of the narrative, the audience for that narrative, the dangers of believing or not believing that narrative about the subject. And again, you may not have answers to all these questions, but at least kind of as a starting point, and you'll investigate it further next week by finding an article or several that reflect these narratives about the subject, right? And again, the more complex and interesting the subject and the narratives that you choose, the better, right? So the more fruitful this will be for later writing this semester and for further research. So pick something that maybe you're even unsure about what you feel about the narrative and go forward with that. Finally, note that this is not an essay assignment. The process assignment is not meant to be an essay. It can simply be 2 sections where you share your 2 different topics with these questions addressed, okay? You should have, readable prose paragraphs, right? But this doesn't require a lot of additional sources. It doesn't require anything like a thesis or an introduction or conclusion. It's just meant to be a brainstorming document, a well-written one, an organized one, but just a brainstorming document of sorts, okay? So let me know if you have any questions. Again, here's just a reminder of kind of some deadlines for this week. Let me know if you have questions in our question forum through the discussion link over email. I'm happy to answer any questions as you get started on the process assignment. And otherwise, I will see you all online this week.